Hello, you're watching A Peculiar People. Today I want to talk a little bit about prepping, more specifically community and commitment, right? So we see the world, the state that this country's in, and we feel a need to be prepared for what's coming, at least those of us that are preppers. And so if I had to guess, I'd say financial collapse. Judging by what's going on in this country, we can't print money quick enough. We can't give it away quick enough. This is not going to be a political video, right? But my guess would be financial collapse, and probably sooner than later at this point, but I could be wrong. Could still be years away. Could still be an EMP or some other kind of social disaster, right? We really don't know, but the road to preparedness is the same because we prepare for a broad spectrum of things to happen, right? So we know that, we talk a lot about it. We know that community is important to that, right? We can't survive what's coming on our own. My wife and I are, I'm going to be 60 in a few months. She's 61. We have our health, praise God. But when you look at what's involved in that kind of survival mode, right, it'll probably be mostly an agrarian economy or society at that point. We're not disillusioned with how we fit into that. And so we feel that we bring some valuable things to the table, and we are going to prepare, and it may just be us, right? But we know that community is important. We know that that group dynamic and group aspect is hugely important to preparedness. So the question now then becomes, how do we achieve that, right? And so it's got to be with nurturing relationships. So I've been prepping for about 8 years, and I have a good friend who we went to church with in Virginia. And in the beginning, he was, kind of, he was respectful, but you could tell like he thought we were a little out there, right? This whole idea of prepping is like, what? So over time, we were good friends to begin with, which helped because we spent time together. And I was able to make my case, so to speak. And just, organically, a little at a time. And he came around, he started to see, and he started to understand. And so he's fully on board now. I'm having trouble keeping up with him, right? He had a huge garden. He's doing rain catchment, and he's storing food, and he's actually working on building a spring house to get water, to ensure a water flow up to his house should power go down, right? So these things are important. He's got a grown daughter who has 2 kids, and same thing. In the beginning, she looked at us like we had 3 heads. But, and I, again, this isn't going to be a political video, but I credit the Biden administration to opening some of these people's eyes. Like for her, she didn't see the need or the impending need to prepare until Biden came along. Now she sees that we're printing money faster than we can grow the trees to make the paper. She sees that we're giving away money at a precedented rate in our country's history. And so she's smart enough to forecast that out and see, like, where's that going, right? Like, how long do you prop that house of cards up before it all comes tumbling down on you? And so she's starting to get on board. And she's got 2 boys who are preteen, right? One's a teenager, one's preteen. So there's a valuable resource if nurtured correctly. And have another guy who's a friend. He lives a couple hours away from me. Met him actually through my YouTube channel, and we became friends. And he's got the prepping mindset as well. He's been, and again, in many ways, he's way ahead of the game than I am. More ahead of the game than I am. But when we look at building this community, our community is small. It's a few people. And so there's got to be a couple components, right? For me, it's got to be like faith. or at least the openness to consider that, right? And because we're all lost until we realize we need a savior. And so you can't rule people out. Certain people, you could tell just from talking to them, from conversations, that their heart is completely hardened toward it. You still can't rule them out, but on the same time, are you going to invest time and resources into nurturing those relationships? Other people, they're half in, half out, but you could see that they're open to it, and so that's a personal decision when it comes to how much time you're going to invest in somebody. Because God can save anybody. He saved me, right? That's proof that he could save anybody. So we have to be careful of that, right? But there has to be, ultimately, there should be a like faith. There should be trust. It has to be a two-way, we have to trust them. They have to trust me, right? These are people that we may have to leave our loved ones with for them to care for, be responsible for in certain situations. And so there's got to be a deep level of trust there. And so trust comes easier for some people than it does for others. And honestly, it's hard for me sometimes. And so there's got to be that aspect of it. So we try to develop these relationships in the mindset of building a community. And sometimes it's defeating because we spend time nurturing these relationships and they dry up. The relationships don't necessarily dry up, but the question of, are these people going to be on board as part of this group? A perfect example, I have two friends who we were co-workers together. We started prepping together several years back. And, we met periodically, we discussed things, put plans together. Soon as it came time to start making a financial commitment or a time commitment, well, I think the time commitment they were okay with. I had a lot in Vermont, and we had stashed some food there and some supplies, so we did some work up there, planted some perennial, started to get some like berry bushes going, and they were on board with those few work days here and there. But when it came time to spend money, then the commitment was severed. The commitment wasn't there. And it's not a judgmental thing. Everybody's got their own finances to manage. I get that. We're on a very tight budget ourselves, my wife and I, but we try to commit, right? So when in the beginning, you can just go grocery shopping and spend $5-10 extra bucks and put away a little bit of rice, a little bit of beans, a couple cans of Spam. Just buy a little bit every week. It adds up very quickly. You put a drop of water in a barrel every week for 10 years, you've got a considerable amount of water, right? So it adds up over time. But then at some point, if you want to be a community, that level of commitment is going to rise, because maybe somebody's got property and they invite you to have that as a contingency location. Now you have to make a commitment. Are you going to buy or build a shed so that you have a shelter when you go there? You're going to spend a few grand or even just a few hundred on a camper to put there. The more you spend, the nicer camper you get, right? But so it's a commitment. And so then you lose some people there when it comes to that. You lose some people in the time aspect, right? If that same person has a large tract of land, they invite you to use it as a contingency location. Maybe they're going to want you to come up periodically and spend a day and help work on the road or cut trees, or those are commitments that you have to be willing to make to be part of a community. And from the other standpoint, if you're the person who owns the land, you're going to be looking for that commitment, because commitment shows commitment, right? I mean, to me, it's a very simple way to put it is like, do you want to be prepared, or do you want to identify as a prepper? Because quite often they could be two different things, right? We all understand the need to prepare. Then when it comes time to spend time, money, other resources, people drop off from there. And again, when you're building a community, that can be discouraging because you put time and invest in relationships. I had those two guys I worked with there, and we're still friends. They're great guys. We're still friends. It doesn't hurt the relationship. We're all adults. We can all still be friends. But it became clear to me that at a certain point, I had to stop beating my head on that closed door to get it to open because it wasn't gonna. They took a few steps in and they stopped, and I couldn't move them forward with the tractor. So again, that's okay. It's not a judgmental thing, but there's time invested, there's plans being made, and then the commitment just dissipates. Now, is that normal, or is that going to happen? I think to a certain degree it is normal, but it's still discouraging, and it's still a hurdle that we have to overcome, right? If we want to build that community, we want to have people in place to survive together with, we have to find a way to overcome those hurdles. And it just comes through nurturing relationships. It's like anything in life. When you put the human aspect into it, it becomes multi-layered, right? It adds so many layers to the equation and so many different scenarios that can unfold from that it becomes tricky, right? All those details, all those logistical things, you're now dealing with somebody else who's, hopefully smart, sentient being, right? They have the ability to think for themselves. They have the ability to make their own decisions. And so if they don't line up with our thoughts and our perspectives, well, minor things don't line up. We have to realize we're all different, right? And that can work out. When you have some major things that line up, i.e. commitment, there's not the same level of commitment, then we have to look at that, right? At some point, we have to draw the line on that. So it's important. Community, commitment, two major components to prepping, and so many layers. Consider it. Thanks for watching. God bless you.